Dr. Paul Craig Roberts is a best-selling author. His latest book and its newest edition is The Tyranny of Good Intentions, getting into the whole police-state control grid in the courts. And he, of course, is a former Wall Street Journal editor, the head of policy, number 2, the father of Reaganomics under Ronald Reagan. And so he can speak briefly to what's happening with the economy. Then I want to get into why he's really here, Iran. He's written some of the most in-depth, insightful articles we've seen about what's really happening there. Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, always great to have you with us.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay, you just heard Napolitano. I'm sure you're aware of this overhaul. What's your take on that?
Well, the Federal Reserve has been such a total failure with less powers. Why would they want to give it more? You know, it was supposed to be the lender of last resort and prevent a contraction of the banking system. It failed. We had the Great Depression. It's supposed to have a stable, maintain a stable currency. It's failed. We've had amazing inflation in the post-World War II period. And it had completely failed in its regulatory obligations. So why give it more regulatory power, especially the kinds of powers that we just heard the judge describe, which have nothing to do with the original Fed charter? So I simply have to assume that something's afoot again. They're pulling another fast one on us, and they have some other agenda.
Well, I agree with you. And imagine if the FBI or the courts or the Congress or the president said, and I've read the bill, it's actually worse than Napolitano said. It said anything that affects a financial structure we can take over. It's even worse. It's everything. And then we've got this water bill that's about to pass the Senate, S787. And this thing allows the feds to own, quote, all water supplies, including wells, rainwater, ponds, aquifers. I mean, my God, this is getting, I can't even believe this, Dr. Roberts.
Yeah, well, it is an amazing grab of power, and why they're doing that is not clear either. I do know some years back when they were persecuting people for building on lots for which they had state permits, and the feds would come in and say, no, there's a wetland, and they were using this a bill that had the term in it, the navigable waters of the United States. Well, of course, puddles aren't navigable waters. Neither are little streams. Neither are ranchers and farmers clearing out their drainage ditches. But they use that to regulate all of this. And finally, the point was made this was a huge overreach, and the Clinton administration said, well, we won't punish the government for abusing its power. We'll just amend the law to reflect what they're doing. And so it could be that that was the origin of this notion to give the federal government a claim over mud puddles and rainwater, so that they would to just sort of make legal what they were already doing under the navigable water interpretation. But why they would want all this power, or what they would do with it, I mean, we're starting to get into the realm of police state science fiction.
Absolutely. Well, when Mr. Police State Science Fiction Alex Jones is starting to think I'm in the Twilight Zone, we must be in trouble, because, I can't believe how fast this is moving. Shifting gears into the main reason we have you here. Again, you're a real conservative, who Ronald Reagan credited as being the father of Reaganomics, biggest boom we've had in, really the last 50, 60 years, versus the fake conservatism of George Bush. You criticized him. Then Obama came in, and you were hopeful, but you've since, for those that haven't read your writings, said it looks like he may be even worse if that's possible. And then everything Obama says, he says no lobbyist, all he hires is lobbyists. He says, I'm going to end the wars, he expands the wars. He says, I'm going to end the indefinite detention and torture, he expands it. And so when I saw him say he wants to be friends with Iran, I said, look out, covert operations. Bush's White House, I'm just filling folks in, admits they had covert operations going on to destabilize Iran. Obama has admitted that. Clearly, they're in there trying to foment things. I don't know who won the election either way, but certainly I agree with the articles you've been writing for your syndicated column, that regardless, our media is using this as a way to get the American people behind attacking Iran. So can you break down the facts? And plus, what you predicted days ago has now come out when we come back. That we got to break, Doctor.
Okay.
But what you said has now come true. BBC has had to retract and admit they were putting up fake photos showing Ahmadinejad supporters and saying they were supporters of the other guy. That's now been confirmed, and I saw you say that first. We'll be right back. Stay with us. I'm looking at the London Guardian headline right now. British woman arrested, imprisoned for asking cop for badge number. Shows him choking her and beating her. And the police are saying that's the new policy. You ask us a question, we beat you. We'll talk to Dr. Roberts about that. His new book covers it. The issue here is we've seen this in society over and over again. The reason I bring it up as we get into Iran is I don't support the mullahs. I know governments tend to get corrupt and evil and bad. The point is that our government has overthrown them in 53, for people that don't know, and Dr. Roberts can speak to that. The issue is they're in there fomenting this revolution. This guy's got connections to the CIA and MI6. We've clearly got color revolutions in there for people that don't know. And if the globalists, the people running our country, are able to bring down Iran, that's going to embolden them to attack more nations. So that's my point here. And Dr. Roberts, I saw him 3-4 days ago write editorials, and he'd show photos pointing out why are these Iranians wearing green for the opposition candidate, holding up signs that are in English. They look westernized, and he went back through some of the history. It's now come out. They are staging rallies. They are staging photos. They got caught. The BBC, as I just said, had to retract. They were showing photos of people that were really supporters of Ahmadinejad and then cropping the photos to deceive people. So there's all sorts of chicanery. In fact, I'm not defending the security forces there, but if you watch those videos on YouTube carefully, there are people firing at the police, attacking their positions, burning cars, and the police are firing back. So all I'm saying is there's deception going on, and I've seen Fox News saying and CNN, oh, we ought to help the Iranians. We ought to give them support. We ought to try to overthrow them. That's deception, folks. The White House admits, and the last White House admits, they're in there manipulating this. They are in there pushing this. So why don't they just be honest? Dr. Roberts.
Well, let me just give some facts. This is not anything to do with my opinion. We've known since May of 2007 from ABC News, from the London Telegraph, from Seymour Hersh and the New Yorker, that that President Bush had signed an authorization for a black ops group to destabilize the Iranian government and to topple it. So they've had that for 2 years, and they've had an open-ended budget. We also know there are press reports that we have been funding not merely politically distant groups, but also terrorist groups, MEK, for example. Groups on the that are or were before we began supporting them on the State Department's list of terrorist organizations. And we know recently there have been bombings and assassinations in Iran carried out by these terrorist groups that we fund. So we know that there is this operation going. It's been going for 2 years. We also know, for example, that the National Endowment for Democracy funds dissident groups in countries that we want to control, where we want to orchestrate a revolution, a color revolution. And recently, the arch neoconservative Kenneth Timmerman, who has an organization It's called Foundation for Democracy. It's funded by the National Endowment for Democracy, and the purpose of Timmerman's organization is to promote democracy in Iran. Now, here's what he wrote prior to the election, he wrote, this is before anybody has voted in Iran, there's talk of a green revolution in Tehran. Well, now, how would he know that? Unless it was an orchestrated plan. Why would there be a green revolution prepared prior to the vote, especially if Mousavi and his supporters were as confident of victory as they claim? In other words, this was all set up in advance. And Timmerman goes on to say that the National Endowment for Democracy, these are direct quotes, has spent millions of dollars promoting color revolutions. Some of that money appears to have made it into the hands of pro